All right. Well, I think we'll get started. Really want to start off by thanking everyone for being on this very exciting webinar or webcast, and it's a topic that we've been excited about digging into for some time, and grateful to have three coaches that were willing to give their time tonight and share their expertise as it relates to collegiate fencing in general, but specifically the NCAA level. I'm going to open up, or rather share my screen, and we'll jump into the slides and get started here. So bear with me, and hopefully you're seeing my screen. Everybody seeing that?
Gotcha.
Okay, excellent. So I'm Bob Bodor, and I'm the Director of Member Services at USA Fencing. Again, thanks everyone for joining us on the call tonight. You're not going to hear much from me. Thankfully, you're going to hear from three coaches at current head coaches at the NCAA Division III level. And really excited about this. We have not done this format before. And so I want to tell everybody right off the bat that we will be recording this. It will be available. I would encourage you to have your phones out, because we do have some slides that I think will be very important for you to capture along the way. But as I said, the PowerPoint will be made available. Our goal here tonight is really to one, provide an overview of NCAA fencing. It's pretty clear to many of us that there are a lot of misconceptions about what NCAA fencing is, and you know, the processes of getting into it, and really what the experience is like overall. So I hope at the end of the evening you have a better understanding of the general side of collegiate fencing, specifically the Division III side. You know, we are very fortunate to have NCAA sponsored fencing at all three divisions. And I think sometimes the Division III levels is the least understood. So hoping that that's something we accomplish tonight as well. We did solicit questions in advance, so we do have some great questions that some of you sent in that we'll be answering. I think many questions will be answered during the presentations themselves. But as it goes on, if you do have something you want to ask, please do put it in the chat box, and I'll do my best to relay those questions to the coaches. The last thing I'll say is the conversation certainly doesn't need to end tonight. You certainly can reach out. I know these coaches have are more than willing to help you through that process. But there are a lot of other NCAA coaches that you can ask as well. The last thing, one more thing I'll say, you know, our goal here is not necessarily to promote a program. It is to promote collegiate fencing at the NCAA level and all of the opportunities that are out there. And we'll even touch a little bit on collegiate club fencing, because the reality is we want everybody to keep fencing when they graduate from high school, whether it's the NCAA level or the collegiate club level. Lots and lots of opportunities for you to continue your passion for the sport. So to start, Coach Momberg was nice enough to put together a little video. These are all Division III, NCAA Division III programs. And we thought it'd be a good way to start the evening. So let's give it a look. So thanks, Coach, for putting that together, and excited to kick it off and bring in our first coach of the evening. So we'll start it off with Coach Eric Momberg, who's the head fencing coach at Lawrence University. Coach.
Hey, thank you, Bob. Thanks to everybody who has taken the time to be here this evening, and I'm excited to get a chance to share. I've worked as a club coach, as a national coach. I've done international travel. I've worked in Div 1 in NCAA and Div 3 in NCAA, and I have to say I'm really excited by NCAA fencing and by all of the possibilities that NCAA Div 3 fencing particularly offers. So I'm really happy to talk about it tonight.
All right, thank you, Coach. Our second coach on the call tonight is Jennie Salmon, the head fencing coach at Brandeis University.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Jennie Salmon, and I am in my third season as the head coach of women's and men's fencing. Brandeis is right outside of Boston in Waltham, Massachusetts. And, you know, as Eric is similarly, I've had my hands in all the pots of fencing since I was in high school, and really feel coming full circle to NCAA's fencing is what I really love and appreciate. And I'm so excited to talk to everyone about it. Thank you, Bob and USA Fencing, for providing us this forum to share our experiences, our insights. And based on the turnout we have tonight, I would say the future looks bright for sure. So thank you for having us.
All right, thank you, Coach. And our third panelist of the evening is Coach Peter Grandbois, the head fencing coach at Denison University.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks also everyone for being here. I'm really thrilled to be here with such fine coaches and to be talking about Division III fencing, which I think is such a vibrant and exciting culture. I've been around fencing for, dare I say it, nearly 40 years, coming up on 40 years. And in that time, I've coached high school, club fencing, and college fencing. So a long history and a long perspective I hope to bring tonight. And also, I think I'm one of the few coaches probably in the US that's also holds a position as a professor as well in academia, and I'm a professor of English at Denison as well. So I just wanted to add that because I may talk a little bit about the academic side, but happy to be here.
All right, thanks, Coach. And I want to apologize. We're having a few issues here with the admission process. I'm sorry, we've had a huge response to this. We exceeded our capacity, so apologies for some of the stuff you might see going on in the video, but I'm trying to get as many people in as we can. So we want to start out tonight, first of all, just again, emphasizing that there are lots and lots of great collegiate opportunities out there at all levels, all divisions. We have 16 Division III programs, and you can see them on your screen right now, the logos of each of these programs. I mentioned that you may want to have your phone ready to take a photo. These will be available, like I said, but this is the list of our current NCAA Division III programs. All great schools, great programs, outstanding coaches, people that really do have the student and the athlete their best interest at heart. And I think that is important to mention. So, these are all opportunities for you to reach out. These coaches are going to share with you, how they would recommend you pursue that. And again, happy to promote any of these schools as we move forward. The Division I programs as well, we want to make sure we mention them. We're very fortunate to be sponsored at the NCAA level, and the NCAA fencing championships will begin in 2 weeks at Penn State, which is always an exciting time of the year. And while we may not have the numbers of participating schools this year that we normally would have, I assure you it's still going to be a great event, and looking forward to seeing those results. So a little bit about the opportunities that exist out there currently. We basically have 3 sections that we're going to talk to you tonight about. Each coach is going to handle one. And kicking it off, we really thought we wanted to, or the coaches wanted to start off just kind of giving an idea of what NCAA fencing is all about. And we're going to start it off with Coach Momberg. As Coach mentioned, he's got experience at the Division I level and the Division III level. And so, really has that all the coaches do, but has a firm grasp on kind of the broader vision of what collegiate fencing is all about, as well as Division III. So we'll start it off with Coach Momberg.
Thank you. So what is NCAA fencing? And I put on here, for starters, it should be fun and a strong addition to your college experience. We want in NCAA to really look at the student athlete, with student being the operative word in there, and athlete being something that enhances their experience in college, enhances their development as a human being, and their journey in life, right? The value in sport is the things that we learn through our process that we can take out of that process and apply to our life, to our career, to our development as a person. And so that's what NCAA fencing is certainly meant to be. And as a body of programs, it is 42 programs combined across all 3 divisions. So when we look at this, it's a D1 program, it's a D3 program, all the programs compete against each other, and on an equal footing. So the the differentiation is much less of a division differentiation and much more of a mission statement of the university, how they view their fencing program, how the coach views their fencing program and what they're doing with it. So each program is unique, and fencing is as itself like one big whole. A lot of the varsity programs will also compete against club programs during the course of their season. It doesn't count for their season, but it gives their athletes experience, and it gives the club programs bouts as well. And that's something that's a little bit outside the scope of our discussion tonight, but club fencing is another option that's out there. When we fence, it's a 5-touch team format, so very similar to when you see a team event at a Ncaa, where it's a relay format, 3 people on a side, right? And it's round robin. So all 3 on this side will fence all 3 on this side, except the score is not cumulative in NCAA. We are doing 5-touch bouts, and winning a 5-touch bout scores essentially 1 point for your school. And we're combining the scores of all 3 weapons within a gender into a pool. So if somebody wins a saber bout, the school gets 1 point. If somebody else wins a foil bout, the school gets 1 point. So in total, there are 27 bouts in a match against another school. And we are attempting to win 14 of those before the other school. And it doesn't matter which weapons we get those 14 from. So it is very, very team oriented. Everybody is making a contribution to the team and the overall team score. We're fencing either 2 strips with saber starting first, foil starting after saber finishes, and epee and saber would start at the same time. And then foil would start when saber finishes, and normally everything wraps up at the same time. Or a 3-strip format where all 3 weapons start at the same time. So it's intense. You've got both teams lined up on each side with only 3 people from each team fencing at a time. So there's a ton of cheering, a ton of focus. It's a really intense environment in a really fun way, in a very supportive way. And so those are our in-season competitions. And normally when we get together, we'll get together with a group of schools. So if you look at Northwestern Winter Duels is I think the biggest meet in the country. You have normally somewhere between 19 and 21 programs represented. So you've got 19 schools in one building and multiple meets going on all at once. And then we'll rotate through and fence another school. It takes about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes for a meet. So we'll fence 5 to 6 meets in a day, and your typical day is going to be 5 to 6 meets. A long day is 8 meets, happens sometimes. And so there's plenty of bout opportunity for everybody within that. From a Div 3 perspective, we have a maximum of 11 dates of competition in the regular season. In Div 1, it is a maximum of 14 dates of competition in the regular season, and then that does not count the postseason. So postseason would include your conference championships, your regional qualifiers or regional championships, and NCAA championships. And regionals, the path to NCAAs is from your regular season, your win-loss record as an individual, the strengths of the bouts that you fence as an individual, and they take that record and they combine it with your score from the regional championships to generate a number to figure out if you have qualified for NCAA championships. So it's possible to qualify for NCAA championships from any program, D1, D2, D3, doesn't matter. And D3 programs do qualify people in NCAAs. Jennie herself qualified 2 women's fencers, I believe, last year, and 1 guy, Jennie? All right. So it is definitely something that we're looking to do and that we are doing on a regular basis. As far as training, the Division 1 maximum is 20 hours of training per week. Nobody can exceed that. And that is in season. So in a quarter school, that's fall quarter, winter quarter. You are considered in season. And then out of season, spring quarter in D1, you have 8 hours of training as a maximum. In D3, we do not have training hours out of season in spring. So we have captain's practices or optional practices that the team runs themselves outside of that time. Where a D1 program, when I was at Northwestern, we went to primarily strength and conditioning and lessons during that time. When we look at scholarships, there is this scholarships versus financial aid and academic merit interesting balance that happens. So Division I programs can have scholarships as well as Division II programs. As far as I know, the Division II program is Wayne State. I think they're the only Division II program currently in the United States. So there are scholarships in D1 and D2. They can have them. It does not mean that they do have them. The Ivies are a notable exception. There are no scholarships for fencing in the Ivies or athletic scholarships in the Ivies. So a program can have scholarships, but doesn't necessarily have to. The maximum that they could have is 5 women's scholarships or 500%, and 4.5 men's scholarships or 450%. And those scholarships can and are broken up by percentage the majority of the time. So when you look at my experience at Northwestern, in order for us to help someone get into the school, we had to give them an athletic scholarship. When I left, we had 34 women on the team. So if you take 5 and divide it by 34, that's going to get you to a general idea of what you're looking at scholarship wise. In D3, we don't have scholarships. However, there is a considerable amount of financial aid available through most institutions, as well as academic merit, as well as other scholarships available. So when I look at from my experience between where I was and where I am, the average financial aid package plus scholarships for my athletes here is considerably higher than the average scholarship offer that I've seen in D1. To the point that I have students here that would be paying less for their entire time here than someone would be paying on scholarship in 1 year at a D1 institution. And it's not always the case, but it really breaks out to the fact that those options, you got to look at all of the options and see which one ends up working out the best for you, because with those scholarships only being 5 and 4.5, they're not always large size. So when you're looking at a program, it's important to ask the coach, if they're a D1 coach, does your program have scholarships? What is the chance that I would get one? And if I am, what kind of percentages are we talking about? And those are good questions to ask up front. As well as if you're looking at a D3 institution, you can look up average financial aid packages. You can ask admissions counselors what average financial aid packages are, and then you can start doing that math yourself early. So I think those are the big bullet points. And as I said, programs are really differentiated more by their coach and their athletic department than they are by their division. It's hard to say, oh, D1 programs do this and D3 programs do this. It's really going to be coach by coach. So you're going to hear from all of us as we go forward. You need to connect. You need to connect with the coach and ask the coach specifically the questions about their program, their direction, how much they're training. And oh, there it is, our 20 hours. I didn't talk about that. So that 20 hours is broken up into most programs, time for conditioning, fencing, and lessons. And that's another thing to ask when you're looking at a program is, what is your training schedule like? Are there going to be lessons available, right? There are plenty of Div 3 programs, all 3 of ours, where lessons are part of what we do. And people sometimes automatically assume, oh, you're D3, you're not doing conditioning or you're not giving lessons. And yes, we are. Every program is different. And so you've got to reach out and ask that coach and have your questions sort of pre-written and make sure that you get them answered as you go. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to, I believe Jennie is up next.
Yep, I'm up. So you will hear that common thread that Eric started to sow, as far as really don't assume when you're going through the process. So I'm just going to speak about how to become an NCAA fencer. And one of the large purposes of this webinar is to share that you can become an NCAA fencer if that is something, or a fencer in college, if that is something that you have as a priority and something you really, really want to do. And we want to give you some steps, general steps to help you get there. So the first step is really think about and know yourself. And I recommend have a notebook dedicated to this even in your sophomore year, and certainly in the summer before your junior year. Start to brainstorm what your goals are as a student athlete prior to doing any sort of forward acts towards universities. What are your academic goals? Where are you currently academically as a sophomore or junior in high school? And where do you foresee or hope, what path are you taking? And start, if you're thinking about what you'd like to do, what you'd like to study when you get to college, that's going to be important. And it's okay if you don't quite know. But you want to have a sense. Along the same lines, you want to have a sense of what your athletic vision and goals are moving forward beyond your high school career. Do you still have a love and passion for fencing and want it to be a huge part of your collegiate experience? Are you looking more for a team experience exclusively, or do you also have individual goals? And these types of things are going to help you gravitate towards programs that are going to be a better match for you. And if you know these things, you can, when you're talking to coaches, you'll be able to identify them. And finally, if there's any non-negotiables, and that's, a parent-student or athlete conversation often, sometimes something like location can be, you're only going to look in a certain area on one coast or the other, or in the middle of the United States. But as Eric said, the financial piece can sometimes feel like that non-negotiable piece off the top, but we want to encourage you to explore that and explore your options and not assume that a school is out of reach. And then you're going to take what you know about yourself and what your goals are and start to research. One great way in our sport is a small world. We see each other at Ncaa. We have the advantage of having high school athletes, collegiate athletes competing together, even regionally, and within local and divisional competitions sometimes. So learn from current student athletes. You will see these athletes have a great pride. They wear their team sweats, they carry their bags and have patches and their socks, there's a lot of pride in being a collegiate athlete. And most of them love to talk about their experience. And I encourage you to speak to athletes who are currently on the team or have recently graduated, because programs ebb and flow and change, and it's important to get up-to-date information about their experience. So that's always a good measure of learning about programs and what they provide. Another good way is just start to go on social, if you're on social media, you look at Instagram or Facebook, even Twitter. Most, if not all, schools will have some sort of an active social media presence. It will give you that sense of the vibe of the team, what's going on, how they're doing athletically, often what they're celebrating in the other aspects of their athletes' experience, whether it's scholastically or with clubs, and those types of things can be really informative. The school athletic websites, again, all schools will have an athletic website as a touch point for all their sports. And go on, hunt around. You'll be able to look at rosters, read coaches' resumes, again, get a sense for how that athletic department approaches and values the sport. And it's a really good tool just to get a sense. You'll see a lot of similarities across the board, but you also see some things that are interesting that may separate one program from another. Your high school guidance counselor, of course, is someone that you're going to speak with, especially in your junior year and forward as you're starting to think about the university level. And they can be a very good guide as far as academic parameters, and what schools are a match for you. If you are able to approach them, if you definitely know you want to prioritize fencing schools, that's really good information to give them, and then you can work from there. And again, sometimes you may hear from a counselor that a school is out of reach. And if it's a school you love and you really want to pursue, take the step to reach out to the coach and find out. They will let you know if it is an out of reach situation. But I've had experiences where it's been good for athletes to take that step. Sometimes it works out in your favor. Finally, the little caveat there is if you are considering and looking at all schools, Div 1 and Div 2 do require you prior to going through recruitment process to register at the Eligibility Center for the NCAA. It's ncaaeligibilitycenter.org. And you just go in and complete a profile. So for Division 3, that is not required. Division 3 coaches don't need your clearinghouse number. You can go in and create a free profile, but it is something, if you're looking at many schools in different divisions, it's a good step to take early on and have it available to coaches. So once you've gone through the process of really taking the time and talking to people, getting a sense and having a list of schools that match you athletically, potentially match you athletically and academically, you're going to act on that. And there's two main ways to act on that. And that is to go on to your first step into reaching out and connecting with the coach. You may have coaches approach you. It's possible a coach may approach you at a certain time at a competition, and that can happen, but don't wait for that to happen. If you know that you're interested in a program and you want to find out more about it, reach out to the head coach via email. And it's a good idea to go on the athletic website. There's a recruiting form that will be on the page of the fencing team, and it's more of a generic thing. So that's why it's good to follow up with the coach with a personal email if it's a school that you're very interested in. Just introduce yourself. You want to keep it relatively short and sweet. Introduce yourself, share your reasons for interest in the school and the fencing team. It's always good to know, without fencing, what about the university do you see that is a good match and valuable to you? And, you can express an interest in meeting. Obviously now we're in COVID, we're in Zoom meeting times and things are different. We were going to see how that changes. In typical years, meetings there's more meetings in person and those types of formats. But I think that now that Zoom has come, it will stay in some format for all of us. And it may be a typical format for these beginning contacts. On that initial contact, you can include a short resume with academic and athletic highlights. Again, one page is fine. You don't have to list everything you've done since your SYC years through to your junior NACs or, whatever you're doing. Just highlights, because you're going to have an opportunity to expand on that in the future. Video is something that a lot of coaches like. I love to see fencing. It's really helpful to see actual bouting. When we say highlights, it's something that you're proud of, but we want to see a body of work, at least an extended amount of fencing. A full bout is helpful. Lessons are okay, but I think the competitive side is good to provide to a coach. So those are your first two steps. And now that you've gotten to know, you've acted on what you know, now you're going to get to know what the actual true matches are. So be prepared to respond quickly if and when you receive a reply from a coach. Don't be very discouraged if a coach doesn't respond to you right away. There's a lot of balls in the air, and depending on the time of year you contact them. If time goes by and you feel like you want to follow up, it's okay to follow up on this, follow up on the same thread of the email that you sent the first time. It'll bring it back to the coach's attention. So if, when you do receive a reply from a coach, if the reply is positive that they'd like to move forward and meet with you, the first thing is to set a time and place and format to meet. It may be, at a tournament, it may be via Zoom or on a phone call, but you're going to set a time for that initial connection. As Eric he did a really good job of kind of giving you already an idea of the types of things you're going to be thinking about, but prepare questions in advance to inform yourself how compatible you are with the program and the school. You know, not all coaches are also professors like Peter. So if a coach doesn't know the answer to something on the academic side, and we know a lot, but if there's any nuance, we have the ability to find out and connect you with other people in the university. So those types of questions are also good to bring to the forefront. Don't just bring your athletic questions. You can bring questions about the university and the student experience as well. And often, you know, we all have athletes on our teams who are great resources for that type of thing. Once you get through that questioning period, you're going to determine with that coach if there's an opportunity to explore becoming a potential student athlete recruit to the program, or if there are walk-on possibilities. And it is, again, it's that every program is different, and it will vary from program to program, and it will vary within programs from year to year, depending on what athletes they currently have in the program, in what weapons, when they're graduating. And so each year we're filling, you know, we're prioritizing. For me, I have men and women, so I will prioritize different gender, different weapon, depending on the makeup of my team at the time, and maybe looking forward 1 to 2 years. So that's why, you know, explore and really ask, because a lot of times it doesn't come down to just you being the best fencer for them. It comes down to a lot of nuances. If there is a potential to join the program, and depending on when you make this initial contact, there's going to be, you know, if you're halfway through your junior year, that type of information is going to be very clear, because you're looking at matriculating in the fall after, you know, within 6 months, versus if your contact is much earlier. But if the coach and you decide there is a potential for a good match, and it's a good idea to move forward, find out the expectations of that process. And we're going to answer questions more specifically later on, but things like commitment, early decision, early action, credential reads, which is looking at your academic credentials and giving you a good idea of how your admissibility is to the university. And those types of things are going to be determined in that first conversation. And then finally, follow through and be transparent in the process. You have this initial conversation. Often you make a connection with that coach, and you may have a conversation with several coaches and feel a connection and a curiosity to move forward. We all know that happens, and that's a good thing. I think that all coaches want athletes to land in the place where they belong, where they're going to be the best fit. So as you go through the process, you may get rather far, and at some point realize which program you're going to commit to and which program is the best for you. And if you're not a recruit, even the program you're going to, if you get into that school, that's the school you're going to go to, and with hopefully the potential to be a part of their team. Make sure you're just transparent and communicate with coaches as you go through the process. If you choose a school that's different, you know, if you are being recruited by Brandeis and you choose a different school, I will wish you well and be very happy for you. So the biggest thing is that communication as you go through the process. And that is a general pathway of how to travel the road to becoming an NCAA fencer. And now Peter's going to pick it up and give us a little more detail.
Right, and I'm going to pick up on that idea of communication too, but this time, you know, communicating between parent and your child. And I want to start out by saying too that I'm a parent, and I have 2 daughters in college currently, and I have a son in high school who is looking at college soon. So I am right there with all of you in terms of having, you know, dealt with this from the parent side. So in some ways I might be do as I say and not as I do, because I've made a few of the mistakes that hopefully you'll learn from my experience. But basically, you know, this idea of communication and being supportive with your child, with your student athlete, and listening to them and letting them lead the process is really key. Kind of back to what Jennie was saying, that you want them to be happy with their choice. So, you know, support them, ask them questions in terms of what kind of college, what kind of university they want, if it's a big school or a small school, if it's a school on the East Coast or the West Coast or the Midwest. But even more importantly, perhaps you can start that communication with what they might be interested in. And again, you know, if a typical high school student may not really know what they're interested in yet, but they may have some ideas. And so you can start that process, and that can be really important in terms of targeting a school. You know, if someone's interested in being a mechanical engineer and they know that, that may be a very different kind of school than someone who wants to be a historian or a music teacher. I've got a list of some links on that slide. I think there are also some pretty important links. And one of the links has to do with the fact that, if you look at the top, say, 50 feeder schools for people to go on to PhDs in science and engineering, most, if not nearly all of them, are small D3 schools. And then there's some Ivies in there too, and a few other schools. So it's really important to look at things like that to see where are these people, coming from for their undergraduate education, and communicating that with your child and hearing from them where they want to go. I think that the other part that's really important is to really realize that you want to be realistic in terms of your ideas of where you want to go or where you want your child to go. I've been in a lot of conversations with both the student athlete and with the parents, and I've seen sort of unrealistic expectations from both sides. And so there's a few links on this slide as well from websites that I think are pretty good at giving you a general idea to get a sense. Do these, what is the acceptance rate at these schools? Is it highly selective? What's the average GPA, the average test scores for these schools? And that only still gives you a part of the picture, because obviously they look at the whole student. And even if you do, say, for example, meet, you can look at some of these websites and say, okay, my GPA and my test scores meet they're kind of the average for that school. That doesn't mean you're in the school. That just means that, it's a maybe. It's a 50-50 thing at that point when you're on the average. So keep that in mind. My advice to parents and to young student athletes, of course, you want to look at that and maybe pick a few schools that are going to be where you're going to match it at that average level for GPA and test scores. Maybe you pick a couple schools where you're slightly above the average. Those are more schools that might be a little stronger chance. And you might pick a couple schools where you're, slightly below that average. And those might be more reach schools. But be realistic. There's a tendency, obviously, I think, to look at, we want to go to the Ivies, and the Ivies the right answer for my child. But it's not always the right answer. For example, there's a book, Lauren Pope's book, Colleges That Changed Lives, which is another really interesting book that can show that there are many other colleges out there and universities out there that may offer just as good, if not a stronger education. I would argue in many cases a stronger education, again, specifically depending on what your child needs. Really encourage parents to be involved in the process, but again, to let the student lead the process. So when they're making that contact with the coach, in general, I think most coaches, and again, every program is different, but most coaches probably would like to talk to the student athlete first, and then maybe the parent can get involved in a conversation in a second conversation later on down the line, or perhaps when you visit the school, if that's possible. The other thing I wanted to mention was to be aware of it. I think both Jennie and Eric may have brought this up already a little bit, but be aware of the fact that sticker price of that school is not the price. I think one of the things that I also hear often, particularly when the parents get involved in the conversation, but sometimes even from the student athletes, is, we could never afford that school. And it's really often not the case. That most of these schools provide, steep discounts in the form of, I think Eric mentioned, the merit scholarships and the need-based financial aid. And the combination of these scholarships can be profound. It can make that university experience often as affordable or even more affordable than the local public university. I can again speak as a parent. My two daughters go to an East Coast D3 school that will not be named, and I pay next to nothing. I am shocked at how little I pay. And so do not be swayed by that sticker price. You only can find out how much of a merit scholarship and need-based scholarship aid you will receive when you apply. So you need to apply to find that out. And that's really important information. So don't let that sway you. I think we'll kind of combine this next point with the next slide. I think part of being involved is, visiting schools if possible. And part of the importance of that visiting schools is to see, the uniqueness of that school's culture and of that team's culture. And I think this is really where parents can have can really play a part. Again, we're in COVID times, so if that visit is not possible, certainly Zoom is possible, and you can do some of the same things over Zoom. But you're really looking to see visit the team. What is the team culture like? Meet with individual athletes on that team. of course, meet with individual students. And if you know what field you might be interested in, or just even have some guesses as to what field you might be interested in academically, that coach can probably arrange for you to visit with a professor or sit in on a class and learn a little bit more about, what's going on with that in that field in that university. So you can get a real sense of what the school culture is like and what the team culture is like. And in the end, it's been my experience as both parent and as coach that that's the most important thing. It's really about the feel. And you'll hear students that, they go on to college, it's about that. They know when they find the right team and they find the right school, that they feel that vibe and they know that's the place for them. And that's where it's really important. And so hopefully you can visit a school, but if not, use Zoom and it can still work for you. And you can still accomplish many of these same goals. I do want to add also, I think that, as I think was mentioned earlier as well, the goal here is to keep you fencing, to get you fencing in college. It's a lot of fun. NCAA fencing is a blast, and the club fencing is a blast. And there are many competitive clubs out there. In fact, there's over 100 clubs that are pretty competitive at colleges and universities around the country. Here at Denison, the women are varsity, but we have a competitive club that travels and competes against other clubs and against other varsity teams. So that's also an option that will, that's important, I think. I think that's all I have. Or should I talk about the test optional admission requirements at all?
Yeah, I think you could throw that in there.
Yeah, so I guess as far as, most Denison's a test optional school. There are many, I know Brandeis is Lawrence a test optional school?
Yes, we are.
So yeah, that's the kind of the trend now. And I think more and more schools nationally are going test optional. I do not necessarily think this is a blip from COVID. I think we'll be seeing more and more of this. And I think that's also something that's very important to remember, that they're looking at the whole person. And if you have scores, great. But if you don't have them, again, don't let that, or if they're not that great, don't let that stop you. These schools are looking at the whole person, and there's lots of ways to evaluate if you're going to be a good fit for the school.
Yep, Peter, I was going to ask, so commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so for any one of you, parafencing, is certainly something that is growing and that we're working very hard here to support. Can any of you speak to just, the commitment that you believe exists at all levels, not just Division III, but at the collegiate level, to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, and included in that might be parafencing? Is that something that you think is possible at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think we're all committed to that. And I think that's part of what, when we talk about D3 schools, that's part of their commitment is to, to diversity. That's what makes these schools great. And that's how I think part of the philosophy of most, if not all, D3 schools. And I would certainly say, for my program, and I think it's the same for Jennie and Eric's, and I'm sure many others, that we have, that a commitment to diversity, and to, if we can get, anything we can do to help, we will do.
I would agree with that, and I think there's a really strong commitment to diversity and equity at both programs that I've worked at, and all of the programs that I've seen thus far. I think it's something that's really strong within NCAA. Mm-hmm. And as for parafencing, there's been a lot of conversations around it, and I've seen a lot of schools support it in ways that they can. We don't have parafencing competition currently. But I know all of the coaches that I know would work to make a space for someone at practice or something like that if someone were going to participate in a team. So I think there's possibilities there, and it would be reaching out to the coach of the institution.
Excellent. Well, great presentation. We're going to jump into the questions, and I do want to apologize again. We had such an overwhelming response to this, and apologies for the emails that keep coming in, but it really does speak to how big of an interest there is in the fencing community and collegiate fencing, and so apologies for some of that, but in some respects, I'm glad to see it, because it is. It's absolutely indicative of the importance that people place on that. So we're going to jump into some questions, and I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen because I do want to check the chat. But to start, we'll start with the first question. We're going to open this up for all the coaches, and certainly all three of you are welcome to jump in. A lot of people are wondering when Division III schools can begin recruiting according to the NCAA rules. Are there differences between NCAA Division I and Division II and Division III in terms of when you can talk to or potential student athletes, prospects? So who would like to kick that off and just kind of share a little bit on the recruiting calendar in Division III and how there might be some differences between the other divisions?
I think I threw in the chat earlier that August 1, and don't quote me on that because I think it might have moved a tiny bit earlier even in D1. But you're looking to reach out in your junior year for sure. Like that's the thing, like right at the beginning of your junior year is when you want to be on everybody's radar. And I will let Jennie and Peter talk to more of the specifics on D3 because I'm the new guy in D3 and I cross the rules up in my head constantly. So
we're always double and triple checking and making sure, compliance is definitely something all coaches are very aware of and want to adhere to. Athletes reaching out to coaches as far as Division III is concerned, anything in that is begun by the athlete contacting the coach, there's an ability for the coach to respond and communicate in Division III. In Division I, that is not the case. They have parameters as far as even being able to communicate. But that right before your junior year begins or as your junior year begins is really when you're going to find the deeper recruiting process happening. From what my experience in Div 3, it may happen through the summer as far as summer nationals, more of a feeling of contact and speaking with coaches. But really that's the window that you're shooting for.
Yeah, I'll just add in short, if the athlete initiates the contact in Division III, they can reach out anytime and the coach can respond. Yep. But if it's the coach initiating the contact or if the coach is going to see that athlete, that's again, as they've been saying, after their, I think, is it June 15th? Again, getting the exact date's never exact, but it's after their sophomore year and just before their junior year.
Yeah, and there's, with summer nationals, there's usually some sort of a allowance. Yeah, allowance for coaches when the dates don't line up exactly. Mm-hmm. And that student initiated contact includes if you can unofficially visit a campus at your own expense at any time. And, the coach can say hello to you, but nothing official can happen.
In D3, in D1,
yes.
We cannot even say hi to you.
Right.
So in D1, if you are not in your junior year, even if you're on campus, we cannot meet with you. And I say I am not in Division I anymore, but during that time, we cannot meet with you. If you email a D1 coach during a time when they are not allowed to talk to you, they can answer you and say, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your interest. I cannot talk to you until such and such a date. Please reach out again. But that's the extent of the conversation they're allowed to have with you. So don't think that it's rude. They will answer you to tell you that they cannot answer you. And I saw something pop up in the chat that I'll hit really fast. That was, if a program is beyond you, should you reach out anyway? If you want to go to school there and you want to fence there, reach out. Don't leave it to yourself to decide whether a program is beyond you. That's the coach's job. If you're interested in a program, tell that program you're interested. It's about finding fit. You don't know necessarily what they're looking for, what they need, what they see in you in development potential, et cetera, et cetera. And if you think the program is beyond you, it's a conversation with the coach of how much competition time am I going to get? Do I get lessons if I'm the lowest person on your roster, right? Every program is different. But don't hesitate to reach out to any program. Just make sure you ask the questions. Do I get to compete? What if I get in, can I walk on? If I get in on my own without your help, can I walk on to the team? Yes or no? Every program is going to be different there. If I walk on, do I get treated the same as everybody else? Every program is going to be different there. But no program is beyond your reach. Ask everybody. Reach out and look. It's amazing how many people, no matter how early we started, no matter what we do, there are always schools at all levels that are short something in the last minute. It's amazing. Like you'll get to a place and a D1 program and be like, man, do you know a women's saber? It's like, I need one more good women's sabers or whatever it is. Because maybe you commit to someone. When I was at Northwestern, we committed and then to an international athlete. And there was scholarship involved and everything like that. And at the last minute, when the U.S. Trade policy with that country changed, that person's parents pulled the plug after commitment, and we were short a fencer and would have taken somebody like in the last second to fill that spot. So you never know. So always reach out.
One person asked in the chat, how early do you want to hear from a prospect? I know we went over the rules, but I mean, do you want to hear from a freshman, or is it really not something? I mean, you're all very busy, are you going to have a hard time giving that person the attention they may want? What are your thoughts on that? What year would you ideally like to start hearing from someone?
I think after, at minimum after the end of their sophomore year, moving into the junior year, and then in the early part of the junior year also is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But again, as Eric said, if you are halfway through your junior year and thought one place was going to work out, do not hesitate. Something changes, still reach out to programs, because there are opportunities even, later in the year for juniors who are graduating. They may find opportunities later.
Okay, great.
And I would say your timeline is, if you reach out to somebody in your sophomore year, like at least they know you're interested, right? And if I have your name and I'm at a tournament and that person emailed me, I'll watch. I can stop and watch. But again, I'm not going to get real serious in that look until junior year, but I will look. Like I will stop and pay attention and if I can. But it's more in that junior year. So you're really like, if you want to be on time for everybody, you're looking at reaching out right at the beginning of that junior year, sometime between when your junior year starts and September. You want to be on the radar of the schools that you're looking at in that window. And then the conversations are going to get serious in spring, early spring, and they're normally finishing up, right? Programs can make verbal offers at any time. They can't make a written offer until September 1 of your senior year, but they can make a verbal offer at any time. So a lot of things are finishing up, at least in a verbal sense, late spring. For us at Northwestern, we were mostly done by summer nationals with like a little bit of mop up for the following year, right? And then you're going to apply, if you're serious about any school, you're going to apply early. Early decision in D1, early decision in D3, early decision, early action if you're serious. And again, to keep circling back, just because you didn't do that doesn't mean an opportunity is not going to open up. It's just if it's you know what you're after, that's the timeline you're on. And if you're late to the game, you're late to the game. Reach out anyway. Don't think you're done and not explore your opportunities.
Should we define early action, early decision?
Yeah, I'm going to come to that, Peter. I've got that slide. Yep. Before we get to that, a couple quick hitters that were in the chat box. How about multi-sport athletes? Is that something that you think is doable at the Division III level or at any level? I mean, would you as coaches be open to one of your athletes competing in a second sport?
It is doable.
Yeah.
It is doable. I mean, there are athletes that do it here in multiple sports. I have not yet done it myself. It's doable. It's hard if the athlete's committed in both sports and if the coaches are able to communicate and work things out. I have a feeling that's fairly program specific again.
Yeah, I agree with Peter. It's definitely a question that's worth asking, and I think you'll find that especially in Div 3, it can be very doable if the athlete has to have that commitment for sure.
Okay, great. A question regarding scholarships. Somebody asked, so 5 scholarships per year, or 5 scholarships, is that per year or team? So if Eric, maybe you want to take that and explain that.
Yeah, no, it's 5 total on the team at a time, right? So it's not every year they have 5. So they're mapping out okay, I have this person at 20% and they're going to graduate this year. So that frees up that 20%, right? I mean, Zach at Northwestern right now is starting to do his 2023 math, right? Okay, like these guys graduate, that frees up this money, that frees up this. So I'm going to have X number to offer here. And then they divide it weapon by weapon. Where's my need? What am I looking for? So that's 500% total on the team at any given time, and 450% in men's.
And that's good to hear. I mean, I think that's, again, if there's a takeaway for the parents and everybody on the call, do the math. What did you say, Eric? 38 divided by 5 scholarships.
We're not talking 34. Yeah, 5 divided by 34.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that myth really needs to be busted for our fencing families. I mean, that is not, a huge amount of funds. You're going to likely, as all the coaches have talked about, actually get better scholarships because you're a great student, or you're heavily involved in community service, or I mean, that's just the reality. So, people just need to understand that. Certainly I get it. There's a level of, I guess, prestige about getting a scholarship, but it isn't going to be the money savings that most or many of our families think. So thank you for clarifying that. We had another question that was answered.
I will add to that real quick, Bob, that the rule was, so there was previously a rule that you could not receive both athletic aid and need-based aid at the same time. And so if someone took an athletic scholarship, and let's say that scholarship was 10%, which is very common, right? They could not accept any need-based aid. It was one or the other. That rule has changed. So those two things can now be combined, which makes some of those smaller scholarships valuable in that way. How schools are going to handle that, again, is going to be different school by school. Whether they're going to leave it the way it was, combine, we don't know. So it's a question you would have to ask school by school.
And not every Division I school, besides the Ivy Leagues, there are other Division I schools that either don't have the full 5 or 4.5, or don't have scholarships. So again, that's
Correct.
The question to ask.
Excellent. Another question that one of you answered, but I just want to make sure everybody heard it, is the 20-hour a week. Does that include weekends? And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, you are required, the student athletes do get 1 day off where there's no athletics at all. So could you clarify both of those? The 20 hours includes weekends though, correct?
I mean, not necessarily if you're traveling and doing a meet, it's not including that. No, 20 hours is the practice, the conditioning. And it may not be that, again, every program is different. That's the maximum of practice, lessons, and conditioning. If you're traveling to a meet for a couple days, that's going to be a bigger time commitment in that week if you're traveling on the weekend. For that
Competition has a set number of hours that it counts for, no matter how long you were gone.
Okay.
And that's how that works in the D1, because D1 has to track their hours very, very, very strictly. But you do need to provide a day off within the week. You can choose what day your week starts on, right? So you could measure your week Wednesday to Wednesday if you wanted to. But you do have to make sure that within a given week cycle, there is a day off. Yes. And I'm not aware of programs that are maxing their 20 hours.
Gotcha.
There are programs getting close, but.
Excellent. Let's move on to this question. Peter, you referenced it. Let me make sure. Early read, early action, early decision, regular decision in college recruitment. I mean, a lot of different stuff. I suspect many of the folks on the call are aware of somewhat what that means, but can some of you, and Peter, if you want to jump in first, just kind of share some thoughts on how that works. I know some schools maybe push more kids to go early than others, and how that all works. So just some thoughts would be great.
Right. So early read can start at the end of your junior year, and again going forward into the summer and the fall of your senior year. What that means, I think Jennie alluded to it, is that the school, the college or university will look at your transcript, an unofficial transcript. They'll look at your test scores if you have them. They'll look at what classes you're thinking of taking your senior year, and they'll give you an answer back as to what your admissibility is for the university. And what that means is it's kind of they'll tell you in sort of probabilities. You'll probably be accepted in early decision, and you may be accepted in regular decision. They'll give you a sense of your chances for being accepted under early decision and regular decision, and I can talk about what those are. as well. I will say that some universities in the early read will also tell you how much merit scholarship you'll qualify for, but not all of them will do that. So that depends again on the program. Early action, that's different. That's just applying, or the school is asking you, if you apply early, they're going to give you an answer early, but it's a non-binding answer. So the student is free to say no, to later on, but you can apply early and the school will give you an answer early, and that's all that means. Whereas early decision is a binding decision. So if you apply early decision and the school accepts you, you're saying, I'm going to go to that school and I'm committed to that school. The benefit of early decision is, again, this depends on each university, but very often your chances of getting accepted to that university are about doubled under early decision, sometimes even more than that, sometimes a little less. But it's if you're really serious about that university, it's a really important thing to think about, because it makes it really increases your chances of getting in. And then of course, regular decision is just applying in the normal decision window. There's no commitment to that application, and you can decide which, you can take your time to decide which school you'd like to go to.
So if I heard you right, then if the student athlete does the research that you talked about, and all three of you have talked about, and got out in front of this as a sophomore and did visits in the summer between their sophomore and junior year, and then visited again, really drilled down, those are the ones that might want to consider early decision. They certainly wouldn't want to do that if they're not fully, sure of where they're going or where their heart is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to clarify that from my own mind. So early decision, though, you can't do early decision, I guess I'm trying to say, if you haven't done all your homework and really dove in on everything. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you want to know. As Peter said, like if you apply early decision and you get in, that's where you're going. So you want to know, you want to have your questions answered by then. If you're down to your top 2 or 3, you could go the early action route if a school has early action, which is applying early but non-binding.
Mm-hmm.
And those deadlines are in November. So that's something to think about for everybody, is like, if you're serious about getting a fencing spot in most places, you're looking at applying in November. And then, if you're not ready to apply, then that's fine. Just know that those slots are getting a little slimmer as time goes on. Most programs have a finite number of spaces.
Okay, gotcha. I'm going to go quick here, guys. So forgive me, coaches, but we're at 5 after the hour, and I want to get to a few more questions. So sorry if I'm getting a little pushy here, but this is what everybody wants to know. How much influence do fencing coaches have on admissions? And let me, because the next one's financial aid. So let's just lump it together. How much do you as coaches, how much influence on admissions, and then how much on financial aid?
Well, the influence on admissions is going, again, to vary program to program, and it will often vary between early decision and regular decision, how much influence a coach can, and sometimes coaches won't put influence into regular decision. They're just looking for people who are really committed. And so again, those are the questions you need to ask. But it truly does vary how much true influence a coach has on securing positive admission or helping to secure positive admission for an athlete. And nothing is ever 100% guaranteed until that decision is made. But certainly some programs do have significant influence. As far as financial aid, there is absolutely no influence from the athletic side on financial aid. It is a separate process completely.
They have control over their scholarships if they have them, but not financial aid in any situation.
Right.
Okay. How about we've had some questions in the chat, and I'll put it up. So classifications and points list. A lot of fencers maybe worried that they don't have the right classification or they're not high up on the points list. Talk to us a little bit about your recruiting and how it relates to those two areas.
I'll jump in on that one. Just since I've worked both divisions, I would say if you're looking at a top 10, like top 10 on the fencing list institution, yes, the conversation about like A or B national points, World Cup points, those are all things that we're looking at. When I was working Div 1, we were starting on the World Cup points list and working our way down. we didn't always get what we wanted because everybody's doing that, right? But if you're looking at a top 10 institution, you need to be thinking preferably with national points, B, with national points will do it. And then as you work your way down to other programs, everybody's looking at it. Everybody's looking, but it's not going to be the make or break. And even at Northwestern, we were culture first. And I am still culture first. I will always take someone who fits the culture of the program, who has developmental potential, over someone who has higher results if they are not a cultural fit. And we were very much that way at Northwestern as well. And I know a lot of programs are that way. They're looking for that fit. So don't feel like you are where you are. Just reach out and be upfront about it and see if you're a fit.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on that one? Do you guys talk to their coach? What's the role of the club coach or the high school coach in this recruiting process? Obviously, our community is fairly small, but are you talking to your recruits coaches and getting their perspective during this process?
I may, and if a coach reaches out to me, I'm happy to speak with them. And there's been times when, and often, especially pre-COVID, when we're all at tournaments and things, those conversations happen naturally. And that does help us, really often get an even better glimpse into the athlete from the coach that has worked with them's perspective, and that cultural fit is super important for a lot of programs.
Excellent. Let's talk COVID, everybody's favorite, not favorite subject. We've had a lot of questions about this. How is it impacting, your recruiting? Obviously, very little in-person competition, although fingers crossed. I think we're hopeful that we're going to see some very soon. So can you share your thoughts on what these young people should be thinking about in terms of how they can get seen and what COVID has done to the whole recruiting process? I know we've talked about Zoom and we've talked about using video, and that's helpful. Any other thoughts on what they should be thinking about?
I would just really quickly say it puts the impetus on the student athlete, because many coaches, myself included, but many of them are restricted from travel right now in terms of recruitment. So we can't travel for recruitment. Obviously, there's not many fencing tournaments happening, so that hampers recruitment. And so really, in many ways, the impetus is on the student athlete to reach out, make those contacts, and as we said, send those videos and so on, so that we can start the conversation.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a 16-year-old that often thinks COVID is just happening to her, and just reassuring all the athletes that are in this situation right now, we're all in it together. It's something we're going through, and we're making the adjustments, but they're not at a disadvantage. We're all working through it together.
What about, thank you for that. What about homeschooled student athletes? Any difference recruiting a homeschooled student athlete, that you might mention, or no difference at all?
They're going to go through the same process. I would let Peter speak to that academically, but they're going to go through the same process as everybody else. From a fencing side, not necessarily looking at it differently.
Yeah, similar. I mean, even academic side, it's not all that different. So yeah.
Okay, good. And then Jennie, back to you, because I know you're very involved in the high school community on Long Island. What about fencers that compete for their high school? Does that enter the equation at all? I'm not really sure where I'm going with the question, but I just wanted to touch base on those young people that are involved with high school fencing.
A large portion of high school athletes also belong to a club or have that club experience, and at least are competing at a divisional level, regional level. So as we've discussed throughout this forum, those are all good experiences, and you want to talk to coaches and see how you build on them. When you have athletes who are really have been exposed to and only experienced the sport in high school, I would still say sometimes those are the athletes who have only just begun, and that developmental piece is really big. Video is helpful if they feel that passion. There certainly is opportunity, and one advantage that those athletes have is they've experienced the format of fencing as we fence it collegiately. So they bring that, they can often be that cultural piece that really helps a program develop and grow and be supported. And I'm always excited to find an athlete who's super passionate, and if there is an opportunity and a place for them, I think a lot of coaches would be very happy to have that discussion with them.
Yeah, I would say short version is high school results are not something that
No.
we're really
Yeah.
looking at across the board. High school results are not aren't a measure that we're looking at, but high school experience with the format, with leadership, with being part of a team is something that's interesting.
Okay, great. We're nearing the end here. I put the glossary of terms on or a glossary of terms. I think we've covered most of these. But does any of you have a good definition of the difference between a recruit and a walk-on? I mean, we've got it written here. I know from personal experience, a lot of programs in many sports, the walk-on ends up being a very, very successful athlete. So can any of you share your thoughts on the difference there?
A recruit from the definition of recruit is someone who has been talking to a coach. When we think of it, or at least when I think of it as a coach, a recruit is someone that I'm actively trying to pull towards my team. When we think kind of in my mind, when I think about a recruited athlete is someone that I saw, or they reached out to me, and then we had multiple conversations. We figured out it was a good cultural fit. I offered them a roster spot on the team. They applied and took that roster spot. Versus a walk-on is someone who gets into the school on their own and either reaches out right before that or right after that and says, "Hey, I'm really interested," or I got admitted. May I fence? Right. And there are walk-on situations everywhere. And that's something to ask at a program is, do you take walk-ons? Because that would be, you get into the program on your own and then you want to join the fencing team. Some programs do, some programs do not. As a blanket policy, some programs are yes, some programs are no. And then in some cases, it's whether or not there's any room left. For me, there are times where I would and times where I would not, based on the size of my team.
Great answer. I guess where I was going with that, I figured it out after I asked and brought it up. Is I think what we're illustrating here is there's a tremendously wide spectrum of college fencing. There is one end, which is, those top 10 programs, Eric, that you referred to, and, looking at where you are on the national points, down to Division III, where perhaps that's not quite as important. And then even the walk-on, the young person that maybe has some improvement to do, but because they're a good fit culturally and academically and otherwise, they may find themselves, being on a roster. And then of course the club side, which is still very important. The opportunity to fence after high school is very real for anybody. It's just finding that fit, along that spectrum. So I don't know if that makes sense, or that's kind of where I was going with that, overall. So we are about at the end of the time. First of all, thank you all so much. What a great job you've done. And again, I want to make sure that we illustrate that, lots of great programs, Division III and otherwise. Any last comments from anybody before we close here?
I think those were great, Bob. I mean, I think just that message that if you want to fence in college, you can, that there are a range of programs out there from Division I to Division III to even club, and to really take a look at those Division III programs, because there's a range within them as well. There's some incredibly strong and rigorous programs at some incredibly strong and rigorous schools.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would agree absolutely with everything Peter said. And the 3 Ds in Div 3 represent discover, develop, and dedicate. And I think that's kind of the process we described here. Discover yourself, discover what's out there, develop relationships, develop your knowledge, and then at some point, hopefully you'll find dedication to the place you belong. And that's, we just encourage you to take the journey and don't assume, see what's out there.
That was awesome. I really want to follow that up. I agree with what they're saying, and it's all about fit, right? Like, yes, we're looking for the best fit within the best ability level that we can get, and it's some combination of that. So all the factors matter: who you are, what you believe, how you're fencing, where you are in your development. And it's just about finding the place where you fit, the place where you're going to love being for 4 years, and the place that feels like you fit their culture, right? And it's a two-way street. You're interviewing each other. Don't feel like you have to present yourself in some way to get that spot. Make sure that you're interviewing them and you want that spot. Because it's your 4 years, it's where you're going to go, and that's incredibly important. And the last thing I'd say is, like, I'd love to say thank you, A, for everybody who logged on, to taking the time, and for being here, and B, to this group of people. This has been a great team to work with, and I'm really impressed with everybody's stuff. So thank you, Jennie, Peter, Bob, really appreciate it.
Well,
Back at you.
Thank you, Eric.
thanks to you all. I put the slide up one more time, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a picture of that, and we will make this available. It's just been super informative. We hope to do some more of these, looking at some different programs, and so look for that in the future, and love to get feedback for those of you on the call as well. We enjoy doing these things, and we'd like to make them better if we can. So again, thanks to the coaches, and thanks to everybody for being on the call. Stay safe, and look forward to seeing you hopefully in the not too distant future at an event somewhere. So have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.